So, you're struggling to figure out which remeshing tool is the best to use in ZBrush. Well, in this video I'll try to do my best to explain the differences between the two and give some examples of how you can use them appropriately. First off, we're going to go over Dynamesh. So, if you've never used it before, you can access it through Geometry and Dynamesh, and then this big button is going to make your mesh look like this. So Dynamesh's algorithm calculates the wireframe by evenly redistributing the polygons across the model's surface based on however you sculpt the forms of the model. And you can change the resolution by using the resolution slider here. So it ensures like a sort of consistency across the entire mesh. The biggest benefit of Dynamesh is that you can sculpt freely without worrying about how the structure of your model is going to change and how it becomes messy. So for an example, I'll pull out some horns in this character. So if I wanted to add something really different to the general form of your mesh, if I use something like that, you can see a bit of the stretching there. But if I just hold Control and click and drag, it very quickly remeshes the entire mesh in one click. It's still a bit messy here. I'm just going to smooth that out and then do that again. And it gets a bit better. This is just because it's at quite a high resolution. So I'm just going to turn it down a bit. Smooth it out again. Click and drag, and there you go. We have some janky horns here. This is the perfect tool to use in your experimental phase. So you're kind of experimenting with the forms, changing the topology quite a lot, and then as soon as you see some stretching, you can click and drag. It's one click is all you need, and then it redistributes the polygons evenly across the surface so that your mesh stays workable the entire time you're working with it. As opposed to having a mesh that is ZRemeshed, didn't ZRemesh very well here, but if I wanted to add some horns, you'll still be able to do it, but it's a bit more difficult. And if I wanted to use ZRemesh to do it again, it takes ages to load, and then it doesn't do the most perfect stuff, but it still works in a way, but it doesn't retain the information as well as if you just continued Dynameshing it. So the main thing is that it's faster, because all you have to do is click and drag, and it resets your mesh, and it keeps all your information very nicely. And the other thing is that you can make really big changes really, really fast, and it'll just feel like you're working with clay. So if you have an idea for something you want to create and sculpt, you would just do it in Dynamesh really fast. You'd click and drag and then continue working on it, really roughing it out. And then once you have the clear defined forms of your sculpt, and that's when you would move on to something like ZRemesher. Okay, so say I've been sculpting this for a while in Dynamesh, continually clicking and pressing and, making the forms I want. Maybe I've added a bit of detail as well. This is nice, this is nice. Cool, click and drag, awesome. Now I want to kind of solidify it in and go into the finer details. So initially I might just want to be like, okay, I'll just bump up the resolution here, and then I'll start sculpting on it and Dynamesh it, and then cool, I have more topology now. I can start sculpting super fine details and blah blah blah. But you're not going to want to do that. You can do this to a fairly high degree, and I'm going to show you later on in the video how you can project the details that you might have created in your Dynamesh mesh and put it onto your ZRemeshed mesh. That's a bit of a mouthful. But for now, you're going to want to just keep to the big solid forms in Dynamesh mode and then move into ZRemesher. So generally, just to ensure that you have a copy of your previous thing so that if anything goes wrong you can go back to it, you're going to want to duplicate your mesh. So this is my Dynamesh mesh, and I'm going to duplicate it here, and then you can go on to ZRemesh it. So ZRemesher can be found under Geometry and ZRemesher. The main things you want to take into account now is that this is basically your almost resolution. Is the equivalent sort of to the resolution of your Dynamesh button, but this is just, as it says, a target poly count. So right now it's 100,000, this mesh, but this will reduce it to 3.47 blah blah blah, which is 3,500-ish polygons. ZRemesher's algorithm generates a new, cleaner wireframe by analyzing the model surface. And then it creates like optimized, evenly distributed polygons that really fit with the features. Because if you can see here, the polygons don't really follow the flow of this ridge here. And then we'll see what ZRemesher does. I'm going to put the target poly count to quite low, just because I want to see this be highlighted. And let's give it a click. So again, this is another reason why ZRemesher isn't ideal for blocking out your basic forms, because it takes so long to calculate. And there you go. So now you can see that the polygons follow this ridge here. And that creates a much cleaner silhouette, if you can see here. And yeah, obviously it's not perfect. Algorithms never are perfect, but it's a great base to start detailing on. Now, the general workflow that you do is you press Ctrl D, and then Ctrl D again, and then Ctrl D again, and then you can add some nice details. Obviously you need to, detail every single level. Don't just go straight to subdivision 4. But yeah, now you can really refine your details, and you have ultimate control over all of the different levels of detail, and it's all nice and beautiful. Bear with this sculpting being kind of terrible, by the way, because I'm just doing this with my mouse to demonstrate. Another thing with Dynamesh that you can do is you can fuse two objects together, similar to a boolean. So if I got a cube here from the IMM primitives brush, dragged it on, I might just do one of them, and then I implant it into her head like that, and then I unmask it. If I were to ZRemesh this right now, let's see what happens. So it went a bit crazy just because it's a cube, but if we look at it, if we look at the topology here, we can see that they're two separate meshes still. So if I auto grouped it, you can see they become two polygroups because they're not actually attached to one another. So that can cause a few annoying issues. However, if we go back and we were to Dynamesh it, boop, now suddenly we can see it's all one mesh, and the other cool thing about this is that the polygroups remain. So now if I were to auto group it again, it becomes one solid group. And then I can sculpt on top of this all I want, and they will sculpt uniformly together, which is awesome. Then Dynamesh again, trim dynamic, add some cool stuff to it, and boom. Say you got really, really carried away in Dynamesh and you were like, oh my gosh, I can continue adding all these details and I'll just keep bumping up the resolution and then sculpt and sculpt, and then you have something that you're really proud of, but then you realize, oh god, I needed to ZRemesh this so I could up the subdivision levels and go even higher. So what you can do is just project your details onto a Dynamesh mesh. So let me show you how to do that. First off, you're going to duplicate your mesh here, just to make sure you can keep a mesh with all the details in. And then you're just going to hit ZRemesher. So now we have two meshes. We have this ZRemeshed mesh with this sort of topology, and we have our super dense Dynamesh mesh. Saying mesh so much is making my mouth hurt. So now if I add a subdivision level, obviously the detail won't be there, but I can use the projection function, which is down here, project, it's under subtool. And basically what this will do is it will project anything that's on top of the mesh that you're selecting. So I've selected the ZRemesh mesh, and if I turn on my Dynamesh mesh, this is getting old. If I turn on my Dynamesh one, you can kind of see it overlaid on top. And now, if I go to project, these will change how it projects onto the mesh below. So you might have to fiddle around with that. But I'm just going to click it and see what happens. So if I go to Dynamic Solo and I check you can see that there has been some detail put onto it. And that is all thanks to this mesh that's on top of it. So now I can go onto a higher subdivision, and then I could do that again. Project all. There you go. I didn't project too much information, but it's getting even more detailed. I could do it one more time maybe, but to be honest, this mesh isn't super detailed. I'll just do it one more time though for the fun of it. Okay, it's done. Nice. So now we have all the details projected, and you'll probably be able to see some of the topology artifacts here. However, if we just like smooth by features, polish by features, yeah, we basically have the same mesh now, but with all the nice topology that ZRemesher comes with. So I can scale up and down the subdivisions. So if I wanted to change the horn a bit easier, having the lower poly count will make it so that it doesn't have as intense of an angle to bend on, basically. So yeah, that's how you can use Dynamesh and ZRemesher together to make some really nice, clean sculpts. Thanks for watching. See ya!